All right, guys, we're going to go ahead and start with lesson 4, expressions. This is still unit 7, so we're going to be dealing with properties. Okay, we're going to deal with really 5 properties, but they've necked it down to 4. So let's take a look at these properties. The first property is called the product property, easy property. All right. Another property over here, I'm going to jump over here, is called the additive and multiplicative identity property, easy property. Commutative and associative can be a little bit confusing. We're going to try and give you some clarity on these properties today. Now, the final property that we're going to talk about later down the line here is called the distributive property, and it's probably the most confusing property there is, and we'll spend a couple days on it actually. So let's go ahead and get started here and take a look at just making sure you can see everything what we have here. All right, expressions follow certain rules, right? And expressions follow certain rules called properties, right? All right. Anytime we use a property, it will result in an equivalent expression. Okay, so let's take a look at this. We have the additive and multiplicative identity. And what they want is to use variables here, which they did, and we want to prove it with numbers. Okay, so if P equals 12, all right, this is pretty easy, right? 12 plus 0 is 12. If P equals 12 here, 12 times 1 is 12. Whoops. So what you have to understand is when you start with a number and you end with a number, it's the identity property. This is the identity, all right, the additive identity, and this is the multiplicative identity, multiplying by 1 and adding 0. Okay? All right, we're going to come down to the next one, and it's dealing with the commutative property. Commutative property is a property that we use all the time. You just don't know you use it a lot of time, but it's of addition and multiplication. So, all right, I'm going to use is P is 12, and R is going to be 5. Okay. All right. So, what does this say? Well, it's saying that 12 plus 5 is the same as 5 plus 12. All right. And guess what that also works with? And I'm not going to write those down. I'm going to use those again. It works with multiplication. 12 times 5 is the same as 5 times 12, right? Times 12. So up here, this equals 17, and so does this. They are congruent or equal. Down here, this equals 60, and so does this. So the commutative property says that we can add numbers in any order or multiply numbers in any order and still get the same sum or product. Okay, so now I'm going to bring this up a little bit, excuse me, and we're going to talk about the associative property. I'm going to make sure we're okay, and we are. Okay, so the associative property, all right, says that we can group numbers differently and still get the same answer. So let's use our same thing. P is 12, R is 5. Okay, and now we're going to add another variable, which is S. And S in this instance is going to be 3. Okay, so the associative property says that when I group 12 plus 5 plus 3, do I get the same answer as 12 plus 5 plus 3? So let's take a look at this. Why is this associative property? Because when I look inside the parentheses, I have different numbers. So 12 and 5 is 17, plus 3 is 20. So does 20 equal 5 and 3 is 8, 8 and 12 is 20. So yes, they are equal. And that's what the associative property says. You can group numbers as long as it's addition. Now, this property works for addition and multiplication. I'm going to kind of draw a line there. So this property works addition and multiplication for both commutative and associative. So let's talk about this with multiplication a little bit. Okay, we can say 12 times 5 times 3 is the same as 12 times 5 times 3. And our grouping is just differently. We can still multiply kind of in a different order. We're associating different numbers first, right? So let's take a look at this, right? 12 times 5 is 60. 60 times 3 is 180. Does that equal 5 times 3 is 15? 15 times 12. We could come off to the side, but I'm telling you that does equal 180. So the associative property says, all right, that we can group numbers differently. And again, what gives us away that this is associative is that the numbers are in the same order, but the numbers inside the parentheses change. What gives this away that is commutative? And I'm going to draw a little line here. Because the order of the numbers change. 12, 5. You see how they're different? So that tells me it's commutative. 12, 5. Again, that tells me it's commutative. Now, the last page on this, the last problem, it deals with the zero property, product property. So that just says that, and we're going to stay with our theme as 12. 12 times 0 is 0. Any number times 0 gives us 0. And that's what the zero property says. So that one's easy. As I said, this is easy. Identity, start with a number, end with a number. Start with a number, end with a number. Commutative. The order of the numbers changes, it's commutative. You still get the same answer, whether it's addition or multiplication. Associative. We're grouping numbers. The order doesn't change, but the numbers inside the parentheses does. Identity, zero property. Any number times 0 is 0. All right, let's flip to the next page here, and let's do a little bit of proving on this next page, and hopefully you can see all that. Let me check my nope, you can't. So let me pull that down. Here we are. All right. So commutative property, 18 plus Q is the same as Q plus 18. Zero property, C times A. Any number times 0 is 0. Multiplicative identity, you start with a number, you end with a number. So the multiplicative says you can multiply any number by 1 and get that number. Commutative property says you can switch the order of the number, in this case variables, with multiplication or addition. Additive identity property, you can add 0 to any number and get that number, so you can. Zero product property, 0 times any number is 0. 0, 0. Commutative property of addition, we talked about it up there, but it's the same thing. Q plus 7. Again, we're switching the order of the letters or numbers. That's commutative. Multiplicative identity. Any number times 1 is that number. Okay, so now we're going to slow down. We have a group of 3 here. Associative property. So the associative property works for addition and multiplication, and it says that you can switch the grouping. Look, the order doesn't change, but the numbers inside the parentheses do, and you'll still get the same answer. Additive identity property, you can add 0 to any number or variable, and you'll get that letter or variable. Commutative property of multiplication. Commutative says we can switch the order of the number and still get the same answers. Okay? So those were just some short, sweet examples of these properties, and we're going to hammer on these for a while, so don't worry about that. All right, let's drop down here, and it says match each expression to the other side, all right, and make it equivalent. All right, so A plus B plus C, this is in parentheses. I know that's the same as that, isn't it? Because all they did was associate different numbers. The order doesn't change, but the numbers inside the parentheses do, right? A times B times C is the same as what? Well, it's this, B times. You can multiply in any order you want and still get the same answer. All right, A is equal to A times 1. Any number times 1 gives you that number. And then by default, this is the commutative property of addition. You see, the order changes, okay? And that shows us that. Let's try that again. Now, this is what? When we look at this, right? This is the additive identity property. You can add 0 to any letter or number and still get that answer. E times the quantity of F times G is the same as what? Well, it's the same as this. All right. Did the order of the letters change? No. But what did change is the letter grouping. G times 0, I'm going to jump down there. Any number times 0 is 0. And then, of course, this is commutative. So it's a good review of the properties. We're going to continue on that path. Go ahead and jump into homework. Thanks.